Visiting the region of Deerwood hardly sounds like the adventure you'd hoped for in your life, but necessity has brought you to this once formidable colony. Your wagon sways back and forth as the wheels creak with each crevice and rock crushed or coasted over. The company here leaves much to be desired. You signed on with them because they had a guide and knew the area, but small talk seems to be beyond them completely. Odema told you earlier that your journey should only last a few more days. You suddenly notice a stinging sensation on your leg. It's painful enough to cause you to stand straight up in the wagon. At the same moment, a wheel creaks, and you fall back down to the floor with a thud. "You all right back there?" Odema calls loudly over the sounds of travel. "Fine," you reply back to him. You pull up your pant leg and prod the spot on your skin, red, with a small puncture hole. Great. Your eyes dart around the interior of your moving home. It takes a moment for you to spot the unfolding wings of a beetle, about an inch long, just as it takes flight out of the wagon, and your reach. Another chance at revenge whisked away at the last second. "Welcome to the Deerwood," you mutter to yourself as you take a peek at the rest of the caravan. Night encroached while you were stuck in this wagon, and a blue hue overtakes everything you look at. You start to feel very, very tired. The rolling of the caravan is like a great ship traveling the seas. You can't help but feel fatigued as you look out. Few faces make eye contact, but you don't really feel any desire to say anything. You close the flap that separates you from the outside world and turn back to your cot, which looks surprisingly inviting. Carefully stand up, finding your footing in the rocking wagon, and slump into bed. Drifting away to sleep, you contemplate the complex sequence of events that have brought you to this point. You wonder to yourself, could things get any worse? As you drift to sleep, the last thing you imagine is that your adventures in life are only now just beginning. Instead, it feels like they are suddenly coming to an end. Here in the world of Aora, we find many similarities to other RPGs, especially older ones like Baldur's Gate or even Diablo. Pillars of Eternity does little to blend the new with the old, focusing instead on nostalgia of years gone by. The game uses a complex rule set and combat system to keep things interesting during tense moments, and a dialogue-heavy set of companions and NPCs to keep things interesting the rest of the time. The overarching plot is not spoon-fed to you. Instead, you have to look for the dots to connect them while exploring a vast, richly detailed landscape. You become a watcher quite quickly, and must use your abilities to look into the souls of the living and the dead, gaining knowledge and secrets from them. Your judgments are accepted by most simply because you are a watcher, and therefore have a larger piece of the picture than they do. Decidedly dreary in many aspects, Aora can seem like a cruel place to live, with mad kings, false knights, and a set of gods who seem mostly absentee. Mostly. All of this makes for a gritty adventure that asks many questions, focusing on morality. What is a soul? Should someone be held accountable for the deeds of their past lives? Do you really have a right to judge these people? Or anyone? How do the gods play into all of this? What do the gods even want? Many of these questions are levied at your watcher, but I argue that they are just as much levied at you, the player. What would you do for power? Do you feel like you're making the right choices? Have you considered the consequences? In the end, I feel like the game wants us to think more about what we do and say, and specifically about judgment. I find it very interesting that immediately following this game, Obsidian, the company that created it, took the success they found here and created a new game that took these themes and honed them to a clean edge like sharpening a blade at a grind wheel. Their game, Tyranny, though much shorter, focuses on choices and judgment extensively, and is clearly influenced in the story, character, combat, dialogue, and art styles by Pillars of Eternity, which in itself is something of a spiritual successor to Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, and Planescape Torment. Unfortunately, I never played any of those games, so I have to take this game at face value. It features great ideas and interesting companions. You find an elf wizard in a tavern who is surrounded by ruffians. While trying to convince them to leave him alone, his voice suddenly shifts into a rolling brogue, and he spouts obscenities 1 second, only to apologize profusely the next. What are his secrets? You're joined by a grizzled old priest, a servant of a fiery war goddess, Mogren. He struggles to understand his goddess, and while his own past seems to be both mysterious and haunting, his demeanor would make a sailor blush. A dwarven hunter, searching for a soul, a farmer turned soldier who's lost his faith, and many others. These companions follow you for your power and their own interests. Some of them may connect to your primary goal, but for the most part they are merely people seeking assistance and friendly faces in a bleak world where sometimes children are born without souls, and the gods plot to murder each other, pitting their mortal followers into sacrifice and war. Unfortunately, there are some factions and groups, namely the Dozens and the Knights of the Crucible, who end up seeming rather two-dimensional and black and white in comparison to the writing of various characters. Still, the people and places of Defiance Bay where these two factions are located are able to make up for these shortcomings. I believe the game is intended to make you think more than most. It has the mechanics of many RPGs which have been well established throughout gaming. You kill things and complete quests to become more powerful. The combat is complex and rewarding, but also rather unforgiving, featuring a stat called Endurance which regenerates, but a secondary stat called Health, which continually goes down over long-distance trips, or the more combat a character sees without resting. It's an interesting and unexpected take on fatigue, but I feel it could have been done better. This is a system they removed entirely for standard play in their sequel, but that's a discussion for a different time. All of these stats and upgrades and loot are a means to an end, the end being answers to the questions that the game asks. I feel by the end of the primary campaign, I had learned significant truths about the world my character was inhabiting, but that there were still many answers left hanging. There was resolution, I was secured in my power, but there were still questions. What about the god Aethys, who was destroyed by technology and magic? What about the dragon that I'd let escape? What about the people I'd spared, the people I'd killed? As many questions were answered, just as many were left unanswered. Pillars may leave you with enough questions to where you feel compelled to play again. I don't think this is a failing. I find that the world of Eora is realistically complicated and interesting enough to merit further exploration, and it seems I'm not the only one, as a sequel was made. For now, though, my videos will be diving into the lore, books, tales, and songs of Eora. Perhaps we can all find some answers. Or perhaps we'll merely find more questions.